Hi, class. You're here with Professor Manano. It's Halloween night. Holly's in the background, and we're keeping it low key. Now, I was going to introduce him as Dr. Manano, but let's be real. He's not quite there yet. He's a half doctor, a doctor in training, kind of like a medical resident, but with more charts about disc and less about your cholesterol. So for now, we'll go with Professor Manano. All right, let's jump in. Three, two, one. First question. From a personality psychology standpoint, what do most people misunderstand about motivation? We'll definitely get practical in a minute, but give us the foundation first, then let's break it open.
Oh, is that a question for me, sir? There's a for
Yes,
Holly
sir.
over here.
At the end there, open quote. From a personality psychology standpoint, what do most people misunderstand about motivation? Close quote. I teed it up textbook style first, so you can give them a grounded response, and then pivot into how you really see it in people.
Okay, so from a psychological standpoint and personality psych standpoint, I think most people confuse motivation as being something as conscious. We're covering motives and motivation. You saw in chapter 11 under the unconscious domain or intrapsychic. These are more stable characteristics. Like when we took the disc, for example, I would tell you, I would tell my clients, there goes sir again. But well,
Jump in here with, right? And that's such a key distinction. Um,
I don't
People
think he
often think
knows we're
motivation is
live.
just about what they want right now. But from a personality psych standpoint, especially when we're talking about motives, we're really looking at deep, stable, often unconscious drivers. So when you had them take the trimetrics and disc, for example, you weren't asking, what do you feel like doing this week? You were helping them uncover patterns. Like, do you crave independence? Do you feel driven by results or stability? Those aren't passing moods, they're rooted tendencies. Can I ask you this? How do you explain that to a student who says, but I'm not always like that? Like sometimes I want control, other times I want connection. How do you help them make sense of that?
That's a good question. And hey, sir, I want you to know we're live on camera right now, so we're going to continue with the interview as if it's live and on camera. So to take a step back, I'll answer your first question and then jump into the second one. We'll see how that works, right? So I guess I got to talk fast, class, because if I pause, sir here will jump in. But he's doing a great job. So first thing is motivators, there's something that are much less malleable than, let's say, personality expression or behavior. Like, for example, if you have a behavior you don't necessarily think is the most resourceful behavior for you, I'd say you can change it and you could relatively change it relatively quickly, changing your environment, changing your skill set, changing your capabilities, or just making a conscious change. Your motivators, they're more aligned. I would align them more so with values and what drives you or drives your personality expression. So we don't want to necessarily change what motivates you. We just want to use it in a way that's resourceful. And sir, your second question, I think it was for if a student asks about why their motivators change over time, a couple answers. A, I will point to our environment changes. We change as people be. We grow and we change, especially as a student, you're going through a developmental process. And C, we all have different parts of ourselves. Sometimes we hear, one part, there's one part here and one part there. How do we kind of reconcile those two parts? Human, just like we talked about in the biological domain, human biology is quite complex and messy, and so is just functioning as a human, right? So we have these different parts that drive our behavior, and they can come out at any point in time. Usually, it could be an environmental trigger, something that's anchored to our past. But humans are complex, so sometimes you might feel a little less motivated, sometimes a little more motivated in a particular complex in a particular context. Just know whatever those parts are that come out, like the part of you, for example, for my night class there's a part from almost every student who wants to go over to Treetops Cafe or wherever it is on the South Campus. Right, Holly? Who wants to go over to Treetops Cafe? Say hi, Holly. Holly, say hi. There's Holly. Who wants to go over to the cafe and eat and hang out with their friends. And there's another part that actually I think does want to hear about the lectures that we're doing.
I
Um,
love that yeah, Holly's clearly motivated by snacks and attention. She's got her own behavioral hierarchy going on right now. And you brought up something I really wanted to pull on. We don't want to change what motivates someone. We want to help them use it in a way that's resourceful. That's gold. Because too often students think, I should be more like this, I should want that. but motivation isn't a morality test. It's just data. You work with it, not against it. So here's a follow-up. Let's say a student scores high in dominance or control on DISC, but they're in a job or a relationship where they don't get any say. What's your take on that tension? And how can they use that self-awareness without blowing up their whole situation?
I point to one word, sir, and class, none of this is script, so this is just kind of going off the fly a little bit. Balance, right? So you have to have that balance and realize you might not necessarily get that when I talked about parts earlier, you might not necessarily get a chance to express that part of you or that piece that motivates you in one context or an environment. I think I told you many times in my Psych 101 class, I would say context and environment are key. You're going to hear me mention context virtually all the time, or most of the time, I should say, when I'm doing assessment debriefs. So realize, okay, well, I don't get to express that part of me. I forget what Sir exactly said, but if I don't get to express that part of me in this context, let me find another way to do it, right? So, for example, for me, sometimes I do some work with my clients that is very insightful and very meaningful. Sometimes it's pretty mundane, right? Sometimes it's pretty boring. And that's where I realize, well, I have my doctorate studies, I have teaching, I have other areas that might be martial arts. I can bring out my expressive side. Sorry, Holly, she's giving me your paw. So again, Halloween night, keeping this super informal here with Holly and Sir. So, Sir, go ahead. But I want to start asking you some questions as well. So give me your thoughts on that and then turn it back to me for some questions. The silent, pregnant
Absolutely. And I
pause.
love
There we
that
go.
you're naming context as the key variable. That's the whole game. You're not broken because something doesn't feel right. You're just in the wrong context for that part of you. That's a huge insight. So, to your example, let's say someone scores high on control or dominance, but their job has them constantly taking orders, no room to lead. That person's likely to get frustrated, drained, even disengaged, not because they're weak or difficult, but because they're mismatched. So, yeah, balance, find other domains to express it. That might be a side hustle, martial arts, teaching, even managing a fantasy football league. Doesn't matter where, just matters that you do. All right, your turn, Professor. What's a question you want to ask me?
Well, sir, firstly, I'm glad that example wasn't about me. Martial arts, yes, but fantasy football league. I'm not even a football fan. Holly's getting a little excitable here. So calm down, Holly. Come on back. Question I want to ask you, sir. Yes, we're getting into behavior, a little away from motivation. Sorry about the barking here, class. A little bit away from motivation. We're gonna do a little walk and talk as we get Holly better situated. But from a motivational standpoint, there's a couple key concepts that we haven't talked about. Psychological contract, expectancy theory, human needs. You can turn it over to me for human needs when we go through that. But why don't you speak a little bit more about motivational theory and tie it into what we've been talking about, some actual theory. As I give Holly a treat here.
Always adding the right energy here.
I'm not
That's the
sure about
motivation.
that.
This is how humans learn. Dog barks, you walk, I talk. So let's bring in expectancy theory, which is perfect for this conversation. It's super practical. The idea is simple: effort, performance, reward. People constantly run this mental equation. If I try, will it matter? If I succeed, will I actually get what I want? And when any link in that chain is broken, like if effort doesn't lead to performance because the system's rigged, or performance doesn't lead to reward because no one notices, um, you get demotivated. It's not a personality flaw. It's a rational response to a bad equation. Now, psychological contracts, those are the invisible expectations we carry. It's not what's written in your syllabus or job description. It's what you believe was implied. Like if I show up and do good work, I'll be supported. And when that gets violated, especially quietly, like through neglect or shifting tone, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel betrayed. It hits deep, and that's where motivation collapses. So I'll throw it back to you now, Charlie. When you teach the 6 human needs, how do you help students figure out which ones are driving them? And how can they recognize when one is becoming overgrown, taking over too much?
Thank you, sir. I want to respond to one thing that you said, and I'll talk to 6 human needs there, right? So expectancy theory, input equals output, psychological contract, that goes above and beyond just workplace behavior. So oftentimes we hear about that, but it's any relationship, right? What motivates you might not motivate someone else, but if we generalize and chunk it up to the highest level, what motivates someone, or what could cause a clear lack of motivation, sometimes we want to speak in those terms, is not fulfilling those psychological contracts, these unwritten rules that we have. If I do this, I expect someone else to do that, right? Sometimes I would caution you to really look at your rules. The more rules you have, the more chance you have them to be broken. But some general rules are good. I had a client who contacted me today, and we were speaking. This was more about a personal matter, but they felt in a certain relationship not respected, right? So there's an unwritten rule that there should be respect between two individuals in this relationship. I mean, that is something that I would deem as contextually appropriate. Having a rule that someone always has to do something for you all the time because you do this kind of negates, or I would say doesn't necessarily align with what I would say is the golden rule. Do unto others as they want done unto them. So if we were breaking down to the lowest chunk of information, or the lowest bit size, I'd say start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Very outdated, but if we can understand, if someone's more esteem driven, they might be more ego driven. Understanding what drives them. If someone is very perhaps introverted, tying it back to traits, they might have more of a need for safety around groups. Make sure you meet that need. And I'm not talking about physical safety. That's obvious in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but just safety to express themselves. Or sometimes it's safety to know that they don't have to express themselves if they're too shy or too quiet to do so. So why don't you opine on that, sir? Then we'll go into the six human needs.
That's excellent. And I appreciate the reminder that psychological contracts aren't just for the workplace. They're operating in every human relationship, whether we name them or not. And what you said about rules, the more rules you have, the more chances for them to be broken. That's something students need to sit with, because a lot of motivational pain comes from unspoken, unmet, and unexamined rules. I like that you brought in the Maslow to traits bridge too. If someone's low on extroversion, pushing them into high social interaction situations without psychological safety, you're not motivating them, you're threatening them. All right, let's get into it. You've been teasing it, so go ahead and break it down. What are the six human needs, and how do they show up in your students, your clients, or even yourself?
Yeah, so they show up for all of us, sir. And I think the question you asked and framed was, how do we know when someone is tuning in or dialing into one of these needs too much? So again, we go back to balance. The six human needs are certainty or stability. The opposite of that is uncertainty or requisite variety. Those two are grouped together. The good night. The second, the third human need is significance, and the fourth human need is love and connection, which are paired together as well. And those are what I call the primary needs. These are not wants, these are not desires. We all have a need for them. It's just a question of how they are met. Are they met in a resourceful way or non-resourceful way? You asked me, sir, specifically, how do we know if someone's out of balance with one of these? So if someone is driving for significance or validation, I'll call it all the time, and going to extreme behaviors, anytime we say extremes, we usually know that something is not right. They're out of balance. Or if these needs might seem paradoxical because the opposite of significance is love and connection. So think individuality versus partnership. If we push too much for partnership and don't have individuality, that will play out. We will be able to see that your partner will look at you or whoever you're involved with and say, you're being too needy or too clingy. If we want certainty and want to control every situation all the time, then we know that's just not possible. If you want uncertainty or variety, and you're doing a variety of behaviors that might not be resourceful or even dangerous, we know you're pushing the limits there. So those are the first four. I'll give you the last two, which are more of the first four are what I call the fundamental needs. The last two are fulfillment needs. I would call them both important, but not everyone meets these. This is the distinction I would say between just getting by and being happy. And the last two are growth and contribution. So, real quick, everyone has to grow. If you don't grow, you die. So that means evolving in some way. And then contributing above and beyond yourself, right? So giving back in nature too. I talk about nature and biology, the biological frame a good deal. In nature, if we don't contribute, we get weeded out of the system. So again, I would say reevaluate for yourself if you have heard this model before? Am I meeting all four of those needs? The most resourceful behaviors will find a way to meet all four of them. For me, it was coaching basketball. I had certainty about the plays I would run, the stuff we would do, uncertainty when we got into games, trying to go through this very quickly. Connection obviously felt connected to the team players. If you're a coach making the calls, you feel significant. Primary needs met. When I get above and beyond that, growth, obviously, any type of coaching, even teaching, I would say the same thing for teaching as well. You have to grow, you have to learn to improve, right? Things are evolving every day. And then lastly, contribution. Some of this is volunteer, might be paid at a low rate, but you're doing it to contribute for the good of others. So that's where I would close it there. Just really evaluate yourself, and you can kind of feel it at a visceral level if you're out of balance.
Sorry, having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load.
So, class, I wanted to demonstrate for you how good AI can be. Obviously, I wanted to demonstrate within a chaotic environment because that's the confines I'm in. It's Halloween night. A lot of kids are running in and out trick or treating. Kids are downstairs going out themselves. Some folks are over, and I'm watching Holly because I'm obviously Holly's favorite, right? And she's getting a little wound up too. But it's a good example here. I think it was an epic failure in class on Tuesday when I tried to demonstrate the dopamine serotonin distinction with ChatGPT. I think Chat OpenAI has done a pretty good job on this one. Right. So I might ask him two or three more questions, ask him to jump in, but there's always going to be technical difficulties. Again, I'm walking around, not looking into the camera, taking some time to even do this ad hoc. So just realize this is what it is. It's just meant to be something informal and above and beyond just the motivation theories. I want you to look at this and see, AI does have some really good insights in here. Just got to weed through them sometimes. Hey, sir, are you back with us? We covered a lot. I don't know if you want to quickly opine on what I said or heard what I said, but the six human needs. If not, I will move on if you didn't hear that. And I just want to cover one last point.
I caught it all, and you nailed the bridge from Maslow to personality traits, especially how needs like safety aren't just about danger, they're about.
So I think he missed the human needs part. You can tell when he doesn't give a direct response and says there's an issue. He didn't necessarily catch everything. So I kind of did 5 minutes of talking for him to not respond, but we talk about validation needs. I think the class gets the point and the viewers get the point of this as well. So, sir, we're going to jump in on one last topic, then I'd like you to summarize for us everything we talked about. Summarize the six human needs at your level when you do your summary, just because I think you missed what I talked about. But from a motivational standpoint, I think we can motivate others sometimes based on what we do directly, but sometimes there's indirect motivation. I'll give you two examples very quickly. If I want to give feedback to someone, sometimes it's good to give them direct feedback positively, positive feedback, but sometimes it's good to go to someone else, like their boss or a friend, and say, hey, this person did a really good job. That you can't pay someone enough money to get that type of feedback. It's like others are talking behind their back in a positive way. Think about it that way. It's like, well, wow, they must really appreciate what I did. They went out of their way to talk to my boss's boss about me, and then they came back and circled back, right? It's mostly from an organizational standpoint. And then there's the demotivators that go above and beyond belief. Talk about layoffs. We talk about layoffs all the time. And what happens in layoffs? The people who are left behind are extremely motivated. They're fearful for their jobs. So we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're we like I said, you can't not communicate. The organization has communicated people are dispensable, and we're a person, right? So we could be dispensable down the line. So sometimes it's not what we do, it's what we do to others or what we don't do that can be motivating or demotivating. I want to wind. He's about to talk. That's why I kind of gave that smirk there. But maybe I'll wind this up.
That's a powerful closing point, and it brings this whole conversation full circle. So here's a clean summary for the class. Let me tie it all together. Summary: motivation, personality, and the human side of drive. Tonight, we stepped outside the textbook to talk about real motivation, the kind that shapes how you show up in school, at work, and in your relationships. From a personality psychology perspective, we reminded you that motivation isn't just about what you want, it's often unconscious. Motives, like traits, are more stable and deep rooted. Tools like DISC and Trimetrics can reveal those patterns, not just preferences. We also hit on expectancy theory, effort, performance, reward. People calculate whether it's even worth trying, and when that chain breaks, motivation breaks too. Psychological contracts. These are the unwritten rules, the expectations you think others should fulfill. When they're broken, especially quietly, it can lead to frustration, betrayal, or disengagement. And they exist in every relationship, not just jobs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We acknowledged it's outdated, but useful for understanding someone's dominant focus, whether it's security, esteem, or self expression. Motivation often shifts depending on context and environment, especially under stress. 6 human needs, Tony Robbins' model. Charlie outlined how these show up in your life and why they matter. 1. Certainty. Feeling secure, stable, predictable. 2. Variety. Needing change, not.
All right, sir. I'm not going to go through the 6 human needs because I already did. What I would like to do is just kind of wrap up as well. I'll share my thoughts and you give your thoughts as well. We're studying personality theory. This is the intrapsychic domain that I've morphed into the unconscious domain because a lot of Freudian intrapsychic topics are a bit outdated. What motivates us is mostly at an unconscious level. It's mostly stable, right? We shouldn't try to change that, but try to be more understanding of ourselves, what motivates us, and more importantly, or at least equally important, figure out what motivates others that we're in proximity with, closer relationships, co-workers, students, co-students, colleagues, whoever that may be. What I will sum this up with is in personality, there's a lot of theory, but behind every personality theory, there's a person, right? So let's look at this from a practical standpoint. We can get into all the theories, but just understanding what drives you, not judging yourself for it, understanding where does it work, where does it not, where does it fit, where doesn't it? And again, understanding what drives others and trying to adapt your behavior to meet both the situation as a whole and then others involved in the situation from a motivational standpoint. Sir, any 2 to 3 sentences closing what words of wisdom for the class on Halloween night? Sir, you there? Any closing words? All right, again, class, another epic failure because no response. Sir, I'm not sure you caught my summary, but like I said, behind every personality theory is a person. Can you give me your thoughts behind that?
Yes, and it's one of the most important things you've said tonight. Behind every personality theory, no matter how clean the model or how elegant the framework, is a messy, living, breathing person. And that person has a story. They have values, fears, traumas, dreams, social pressures, and cultural conditioning. Models like the five-factor model, DISC, Trimetrix, MBTI, they give us maps, not the territory. We can use those maps to navigate behavior, predict tendencies, and improve communication, but we can't let the map replace the human. That's why motivation matters so much in personality work. It's what gives behavior context. 2 people can act the same way, but one is driven by fear and the other by purpose. The surface looks identical, but the driver underneath, entirely different. So your statement is a warning and a reminder. Don't get too caught up in the structure. Never lose sight of the human underneath the profile. That's where the real work and the real change happens.
All right, thank you, sir. Have a good night, class. Thank you. This video, just similar to what we talked about, was a bit messy, all over the place, but I think you got the gist, and we're going to continue to work. We'll nail this AI conversations by our December 4th graduation party for the class. Have a good night. Say good night, sir.
Good night, class. Thanks for sticking with us. Messy, real, and exactly how learning should feel.